Brett Favre, an NFL quarterback and Hall of Famer, has been exposed for being involved in a $5 million welfare scandal on poor people in the poorest state of United States. Let's talk about it. In 1992, yes, we're going this far back because every single person I mention in this chapter is tied to this entire scandal. Nancy New files paperwork for her new nonprofit, the Mississippi Community Education Center, which I'll shorten for MCEC, as well for her new private business, the New Summit School. According to tax documents, the MCEC's mission is for the promotion, improvement, and expansion of community education through training seminars, consulting services, and technical assistance. Spoiler alert, that's not their actual mission. In 2013, the MCEC published a now deleted website for their new program, Families First for Mississippi, which is basically a program within the MCEC, which is important for me to mention because it's going to come up later in the story. Scandal. In the late 2010s, the Mississippi's Department of Human Services began to receive $86.5 million from the US government for their new program, TANF. TANF, also known as the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, is a program with the goal to provide assistance for needy families with children up to 18 years of age without discrimination, also known as welfare. But by January 2016, Governor of Mississippi at the time, Phil Bryant, who's also the person who helped Brett Favre in this whole welfare scandal, which I'll get into later, he appointed John Davis as the director of the MDHS. Remember, every person I mention is important. But before I get on to the video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you're enjoying this video and you want to show me support. And also feel free to share this to your family, friends, and peers who talked about the Ime Udoke situation but don't know about this entire scandal. In February 2016, JD hires former pro wrestler Brett Favre as deputy administrator of the MDHS at $95,000 per year. His qualifications for this role? Who knows? Anyways, he lasted like 4 months, but once he was appointed, the tracking of the TANF grant spending started to become suspicious. And the reason mentioning Brett Favre matters is because soon after he left, nonprofit Families First partners with a nonprofit run by the Favre family, and the MCC, run by Nancy New and owns Families First program, were receiving millions of dollars in funding from the MDHS during this time period. And in late 2018, Favre signs a $48,000 contract with the MDHS to inform, update, and educate the MDHS staff and partners on identifying opioid abuse and give training sessions on opioids. Reminder, this is a former pro wrestler. He has no qualifications for this. Not to my surprise, Brett never taught one class, and ironically enough, instead of teaching about drugs, he allegedly used the $48,000 to get treatment for his own sobriety issues at the Rise Luxury Rehab Center in Malibu. It's also around this time that Nancy and her son Zach New and an MCEC accountant allegedly were conspiring to steal around $2 million in funds. In June 2019, following the conducting of an internal audit, employees at the DHS informed Governor Bryant that the agency funds may be misspent, so he sent the info to State Auditor Chad White. Did I say Chad White? Shad White, I don't know. Who then initiated an investigation. And not even 1 month later, Davis conveniently and uncoincidentally retires from his position as director of the MDHS. Well, actually, Phil Bryant kicked him out to avoid controversy and not to get roped into all of this. But that didn't get either of them off the hook, which I'll get into soon, I promise. Now we're in early 2020 and all 6 of these people have been arrested when Mississippi's auditors published a press release detailing that over $75 million from the TANF program has been misallocated by the MDHS to unrelated causes. In other words, they did a reverse Robin Hood by taking money meant for poor people and giving it to their rich friends for their personal projects and investments, which I'm finally about to get into. Anyways, these allegations prompted an FBI investigation, which is when we discover Brett Favre's involvement in all of this. On May 4, 2020, auditors discovered that Favre's company received $1.1 million for 2 speaking appearances that he never did in the first place. In other words, he got $1 million freely for doing absolutely nothing when that money could have helped God knows how many families. Anyways, apparently Favre intended to repay that money in interest, which, spoiler alert, he never did. On October 12, 2021, Favre was warned by the MSA that if he didn't pay the $828,000 that he owned, they would file a civil lawsuit against him. So he responded by paying $600,000 2 weeks later, but he still owed over $200,000. And because of that, Favre was questioned by the FBI about misappropriated funds since he took money that was meant for the TANF program. But according to Favre's lawyer, they had no idea that the money was meant for poor people and they would have never used it if they have known that beforehand. Well, little did Favre know, texts are traceable. This is where things get juicy. Mississippi Today leaked text messages between Brett Favre and Phil Bryant exposing a $5 million heist plan, which was to take money from the poor people so that Brett Favre could use it to fund his new volleyball facility at the University of Southern Mississippi. By the way, I'll point out that none of the texts say verbatim, "Let's steal the welfare kids' money," so the lawyer can get away with saying, "Oh, we didn't know." But in one text, Favre says verbatim, "If you were to pay me, is there any way the media can find out where it came from and how much?" That is pretty incriminating and is the most direct, indirect way of basically admitting to this crime. Also, Brett, about whether the media can find out, I think I can answer this for you. Perhaps. These texts were, of course, lawsuit worthy. Favre also helped steal another cool $2 million from the MDHS to invest it in a pharmaceutical biotech company called Prevacus? Whatever, that he had already invested in, which is genuinely patronizing. Like, why do you need to take welfare money to invest in something you had already invested? Like, are you broke? You know what? He might be broke, okay? It seems like Favre is very desperate for money if he's taking it from welfare funds. I assume that, he filed for bankruptcy at one point. I mean, I'm assuming he didn't make that much money in the NFL. I want you to guess how much money Favre has made in the NFL. Like, what are his total career earnings? $137 million! Oh my gosh, yes, Sulangu. Tell me why do you need $5 million literally meant for poor people? He was the 22nd highest paid NFL player of all time. Where is his money? By the way, the stolen $1 million I mentioned earlier, yeah, that wasn't for anything specific. It was just for personal reasons because, NFL quarterback Hall of Famer Brett Favre is in dire need of $1 million. Do you want to know how the evil mastermind in Brett Favre convinced Phil Bryant, John Davis, and even Nancy New to get in on his welfare heist? Well, there are actually many benefits that he had promised them if they embezzled money for him, as well as other such activities. Number one is to give former Governor Phil Bryant shares in Prevacus, where Favre and his business partner agreed to offer Phil Bryant shares 2 days after he leaves office. Number two is to also give nonprofit founder Nancy New shares in Prevacus. It's the same premise. Here are the text messages. Number three is to buy former director of the MDHS John Davis a F-150 Raptor? He also attempted to convince New and Davis to help him pay off $1 million he still owed on the new volleyball facility, which I'm guessing he never paid the money he owed. In fact, he had to convince the school USM to finance Prevacus so that they could make money through the shares they owned in that investment rather than him directly paying off the money he owed. After JD was replaced by a new director of the MDHS, after he was kicked out, Favre and his doctor partner conspired to convince Phil Bryant to make the new governor, who wasn't their type, to which I'm guessing some elements that would be in the description of their type is, I don't know, corrupt, dishonest, fraudulent, think they can never go to jail for their incriminating activities. These are just some guesses. By the way, I'd like to add that a week before he was exposed to be involved in all of this, he actually spoke to the press about how he raised $8 million for his new volleyball facility, which I'll read now. One of the things I am most proud of about all the things I have been able to achieve is being able to give away so much money and help so many people with Favre for Hope. By no means are we perfect, but we do try to give back. Yes, nothing says giving back more than stealing money from a welfare program in the poor state of America. But I digress. And Brett Favre's goal in all of this, well, it was to make over $20 million in profit from this entire reverse Robin Hood heist. And even though he has been exposed to this extent, he has still not been charged in any way. I don't believe he's going to get away with this. I hope not. I mean, Ime Udoke, which I'm about to get into soon, is facing suspension for not being able to keep it in his pants, but Brett Favre hasn't even been charged with anything. The stinky are eager to get rich and are unaware that poverty awaits them. Now, I'm not saying that he's gonna go broke, which it kind of seems he already is if he's really in need of money. He's not gonna get, I don't believe he's just gonna get away scot-free. There's no way. I mean, SiriusXM has removed his show or something. That is so far the only repercussion I've seen him get from this entire thing, but we'll see. We'll see. It looks like I'm threatening. I'm not threatening him. Anyways, I mentioned Ime Udoke, now we're about to get into it. There's really nothing more infuriating than the sight of rich white people stealing money from poor people of color, which the reason I say that is because 88% of Mississippi's poor population are visible minorities. And considering how complex this heist was and that it involved an NFL Hall of Famer, you would think that was the news of this month. Like, that is all people were talking about. And it is now that I'm filming this, but unfortunately it was insanely overshadowed by Ime Udoke's cheating scandal at the time, because now the cheating scandal kind of is dying off. Seriously, Ime Udoke cheating on Nia Long, which is absurd by the way, is getting more recognition and push than Brett Favre being involved in robbing the hood. And as I'm filming this, the numbers are evened out because, like I said, the Ime Udoke situation is dying off, but unfortunately I didn't screenshot the search numbers. And I would also argue that Favre has more celebrity points than Ime Udoke, no offense to him, but Brett is one of the best NFL quarterbacks of all time and is beloved by many Americans, whilst Ime is a Celtics coach who fumbled a 2-1 lead in the NBA Finals. Like, I don't know, I think Favre scamming poor people is more of a hit piece than Ime Udoke cheating on Nia Long. This is like the 1000th celebrity cheating scandal that we have gotten this year. Meanwhile, Brett Favre might be part of one of the, if not the biggest welfare scandal in US history. But Hannah, the media is reporting this, so doesn't that mean that it's the people's fault for not making this viral? Yes, but no. It is naive to think that the virality of a hit piece is not heavily dependent on the output of the media of said piece. ESPN has put Lord knows how many videos about Ime not being able to keep it in his pants, but has put out one singular video about Brett Favre's welfare scandal. But you know, of course the media cares about constant relationship issues between celebrities more than they do about hundreds of thousands of families being wronged by a system and robbed out of millions in welfare money. And shout out to Shannon Sharp because he was the first to have the gall and the integrity to talk about Brett Favre and to shame him the way he deserved for his crimes.
Yep.
You got to be a sorry mofo to steal from the lowest. Mississippi is the poorest state in our country. Its citizens. So if they're the poorest state, Brett Favre is taken from the underserved. You made $100+ million in the NFL.
And you know, as I'm filming this video, more news are talking about this. I noticed that when I was actually scripting for this video, there weren't that many articles about it. There were enough, but realistically it was like half the amount of articles about Ime Udoke cheating. The very fact that the news articles that we're seeing coming out more and more recently is saying the same things as Mississippi Today tells me that they knew they weren't doing enough output for this hit piece, so they're now pushing this news. All of these articles should have been coming out a week ago, not this week. But I did think this video was important to put out because I just didn't think anyone was talking about it enough. Aside from news channels, I didn't really see anyone make a video about this that are a YouTuber. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe you guys can tell me who has talked about this, but I really don't think anyone did. And that's fine, you know, I'll talk about it. Maybe someone could have done better, but it's fine. I'll talk about it and bring light to this situation because people are just not giving it the recognition it needs. And of course, Ime Udoke is more fun to talk about. I'm not denying that. But how are we meant to fight against discriminating systems if we are sharing another cheating celeb, seemingly more than a bunch of white people in power, stealing millions of dollars in funds meant for poor communities in Mississippi that are dominated by visible minorities? I just felt it was important to dissect the horrendousness of this entire scandal. know what? Let me know what you guys thought in the comments below, and if I mistook or misspoke about any details. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this week's video. Hit the like button, subscribe, and African mama slap the notification bell, and I'll see y'all on the next video when we're back on my channel. Hall of Famer Brett Favre is in dire need of 5-1. I am actually getting triggered.